Good afternoon, everybody. So on behalf of the African and Middle Eastern Division, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone. I'm Anqi Hao, head of the Near East section here in the African Middle Eastern Division. We are very pleased to present this program on the Ethiopian Jews of Israel by Irene Fertik. Before we start the program and introduce our speaker, I would like to give you a brief overview of the division and its resources in the hopes that you will come back to use our reading room and our services. Ahmed is comprised of 3 sections, the African, Hebraic, and Near East sections. 2 of our main responsibilities are to provide reader reference services and to develop a collection of more than 600,000 items in more than 14 languages from 78 countries and regions. Our reading room is located on the 2nd floor of this building in the Northeast Pavilion. So if you have time later on, make sure to come find us. We're on the 2nd floor. The African section covers countries in all of sub-Saharan Africa. This section advises and collaborates in the library's acquisition program through the library's Nairobi field office. The Near East section covers all of the Arab countries, including North Africa and the Middle East, Turkey, Turkic, Central Asia, Iran, Afghanistan, Armenia, and Georgia. The Hebraic section is responsible for Judaica and Hebraica worldwide. And Fentahun Terune will provide more details about the Hebraic section and introduce the speaker in just a moment. The African and Middle Eastern Division is also on social media. We invite you to subscribe to the Four Corners of the World blog and friend us on the International Collections Facebook page. You will learn more about our division's collections, services, and public programs by following us on social media. So make sure to pick up a bookmark. Here, I have some on at the front. So with this, you'll be able to find information about our blog and Facebook and how to subscribe. And I was also told a very important piece of information. Our Hebraic section staff has put together a very nice display from our collection. So it's over there, and that nice display of collections is related to today's topic. So make sure to stop by and take a look. I bet you have never seen some of these very precious items. So one last housekeeping. So if you ask questions, you are giving permission to be recorded. So I just want to make sure you are aware of that. Now I would like to invite Fentahun Terune, Ethiopian reference specialist, to the podium to give us an overview of the Hebraic section and introduce the speaker. Fenta.
Thank you, Anqi. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to this program, the wonderful program that we will have with Ms. Irene Fertik, and I will be introducing her in a minute. I think she has already mentioned that this event is being recorded for a subsequent broadcast, and that you're encouraged to ask questions, and that by doing so, that you're consenting that the library will reproduce and transmit all the remarks in the future. And thank you for your understanding for that. It seems now it's an established fact that Ethiopia is the cradle of mankind and the source of civilization. When we ask who among the present tribes comprising Ethiopia approximate the first humans who formed Ethiopia and the present civilization in the world, the Agos of Ethiopia stand out as the most ancient, cited in the Ethiopian history books that have survived the oppressive past. Few of the Ago tribe members are cited to be the Kamans, Beta Israel, and the Bilenis, among others. These very tribes introduced the first belief in one God. However, with the advent of Christianity, and as the sovereigns of Ethiopia espoused Christianity as the state religion, the original monotheists became the targets of both the state and the church, experiencing untold sufferings and displacement. The Beta Israel community prayed toward the east, facing Jerusalem, for centuries for a return to their mental homeland. This brief background provides the mystery of the Beta Israelis' migration and re-migration in and out of Ethiopia and Israel. My guest, Ms. Irene Fertik, has captured the latest history of the Beta Israel for 25 years in her new book. And Ms. Fertik would be happy to autograph her books. They're on sale on the front. And this will be the place where she would be signing the books. Her entire professional life, over 50 years as a documentary photographer, Irene Fertik has had an emphasis on civil rights, justice, and ethnic cultures. She came of age during the 1960s, graduating from the University of Pittsburgh in 1965 with a degree of sociology. Her publishing company is named Light Catcher, after the Native American word dream catcher. Ms. Fertik was lucky enough to have been in New York City straight from college, shooting and celebrating the Black experience in photos for nonprofits and the performing arts, as well as federally funded grassroots organization within the Black community. She left to take a job as a photojournalist for the largest newspaper in Vermont, the Burlington Free Press, honing her skills there from 1979 to 1985. Moving to Los Angeles afterwards, again, she was lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time, as she soon became the full-time photographer for the University of Southern California. In 1984, the news broke out around the world that the Old Testament Ethiopian Jews were being brought out of Africa to Israel. The rest is her history, and their history in her photographs. This 25-year project of passion is the formative years of this fascinating and vibrant Beta Israel community as they continue to grow from Tesfa to Tikva, from hope to hope. Please welcome Ms. Irene.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so happy that so many people came out here today. So that was a great introduction. Thank you. And so I'll get right to the book. I started photographing the Beta Israel in '92 because I needed a project that I could sink my passion into, and I had heard of these people. You know, at that time I got letters asking for donations, so I'd send a little money. But you know what happens when you send a little money? You get more information, and they want more money. So I learned about them, and I said, wow, this is a group, this is a great photo documentary that I can really sink my teeth into. So I wanted to show you this picture. It's an illustration, but within the Beta Israel community in Ethiopia, they talk about a shimala, which is a stork. They literally look up and see the stork flying over Ethiopia towards Jerusalem, and they knew that's where they wanted to go. And, you know, they were jealous of the stork for going there without them, and I thought that was a very human emotion. And I love the fact that I became very intimate with the community. And that's the kind of work that I wanted to do, to shoot from the inside, not from the outside. So I've been back to Israel. This started in Israel. I missed what their experience coming over, but these are the young people that I shot in absorption centers the first year. By the way, I had someone taking me around who was a young Ethiopian Israeli. I didn't know enough Amharic, Tigrinya, and they didn't know any English, and they certainly had no Hebrew at that time. So I was there for a month, and I said, yes, this is going to be a great story. And I came back many times, made lots of family relationships with people, stayed basically with Ethiopians, and that was a key because I got to know them, they got to know me, I got to know their culture and their hopes for the future. To this day, and the last time I did shooting was in 2015, I'd say. They came, by the way, 95% of Ethiopians who came to Israel could not read or write English. They couldn't read or write their own language. It was an oral culture, and so their parents couldn't help them. They needed support from the outside, and it's been a long struggle to both level the playing field and compete with other Israelis. As you know, Israel is an immigrant country, started in 1948. The Ethiopians got there, the first wave came in the early 80s, but most people who came before them at least had an education, and they were by and large illiterate, so it's taken a long time for their skills to catch up. And to this day, there is a glass ceiling, I must say. But they went, men and women, they went into the army. By the way, when I shot this picture, it was in 1992, only 10% of Ethiopian Israeli women went into the army. Now it's as many as the men because they know it's the way up. It's definitely how to at least get a foothold in Israel, which is a very difficult and very competitive society. There are two Ethiopian Jewish tribes. Most people don't know that. How many here know that they came from Gondar and from Tigray. They spoke different languages, had different cultural singing and dancing. This is a Tigrayan wedding that I shot. And the Tigrayans came there a little bit like a few years earlier than the Amharas, so some of them are doing to this day a lot better because some of them were educated when they got there. I mean, before they got there, they had some education. Sorry. This picture is other Ethiopian Jews who are in Israel, the second or third wave, they're demonstrating at the Knesset, trying to get attention to their relatives who are still in Ethiopia. And to this day, there is still trickling in some Ethiopian Jews who, at this point, they either married out in Ethiopia, they converted, but now they want to be with their relatives in Israel and they want to get back to their Beta Israel past. This woman owns I'm not even using this, but you can hear me. I'm going to get a little closer. She owns a hairdressing establishment. By the way, with my pictures, I like to show my home I have a lot of things from the old country and the new. I made it my business to photograph a lot of the cultural things in Israel, and this is an Ethiopian-Israeli dance company that was doing very well. I started shooting them in '96 to about 2016. And this man here, his name is Tesfa? Hold on. Fertik, sorry about that. He was the first Ethiopian Jew The Tigrayans got there a little bit first, and they went right to the Western Wall. You know, it's not called the Wailing Wall anymore. It's called the Western Wall because people aren't wailing. Anyway, they have a ceremony there called Sig, which they brought with them. It's the only holiday that came with Ethiopians to Israel. And it's a genuflection like that, Sig, and praying to return. Well, now they're not praying to return anymore. They're praying for how grateful and with a hope towards the future, but they still do Sig. And so the Tigrayans are there, and then I have another picture.
Did you say that Sig is now an official
Yes,
Israeli holiday? So
absolutely.
they've adopted the Ethiopian holiday as an Israeli holiday.
Thank you, I forgot that. And there are a lot of young Israelis who participate, at least convene there. There are busloads, maybe 5,000 Ethiopian Israelis come to Sig. Now I start a little section with the problems, the pain, the difficulties. As a journalist, you know, it's about celebrating, but it's also about showing reality. And this is true. Outside is dangerous. Stay home. You know, a lot of the young boys would get into mischief and take a wrong route. And this was one of them. I found him in the bus terminal. He dropped out of school. He dropped out of his family. He's just on the streets. There was a big problem with young boys, teenage boys doing that, rebelling, and there were a lot of Ethiopian Israeli social workers at the bus terminal trying to help, but some of them got into hard drugs and it was very difficult. It's the same with immigrants throughout the world, a lot of young boys and also young Russian immigrants who were educated, who had much more going for them than the Ethiopian Jews. They had a lot of dropouts too. This is girls in the ladies' room. They were smoking when I went into the ladies' room. They put their cigarettes away right away, put them out, and allowed me to photograph. And this was a problem. These people had bought a genesis.
What caused them to such despair?
They had no one to turn to. They didn't want to disappoint their parents. You know, families are so tight and so bonded, but they couldn't speak to their mother about their pain. A lot of it had to do with boyfriend-girlfriend things. And they had no one, really. So they felt they just couldn't live with it.
Were anybody sexually attacked? Is there any not?
That wouldn't be a suicide thing. No, not at that age, because they were so protected by their parents. That would never happen. And the army, when we go to the army at 18, 19, 20, I think there's a lot of protection there. And they're really mature adults by that time, you know, Israelis. Once they get into the army, they're really, really mature. They have to grow up fast. I morphed from sepia to color because I saw this image. I was also shooting digital by this time. And I turned it first to sepia. I said, no, it would look much better in vivid color. And I said, yes, like the community. They're more vibrant. They're more Western. They're more excited. And this is Sigit from, this is on the top of the mountain in Jerusalem, where the Amhara still gather. As I said, the Western Wall is where the Tigrayans traditionally had their sig, but up here was the Amhara. Now they're more mixing. This is a demonstration in Tikva. By the way, I didn't. This sign. Does anyone read Hebrew here?
Students against apartheid.
Hmm?
Students against apartheid.
Go back. Students against apartheid. Student teachers basically demonstrated in Tikva because, especially in Tikva, but other places, they were separating Ethiopian young kids from others, saying they couldn't learn as fast. So it was, their apartheid. They were being separated in schools. I believe it's still going on. Some religious schools especially are that way. And it's all a prejudice, total prejudice. Questions, anyone?
Is it that same sign in that one?
Yeah, I think it is the same song. Same demonstration, by the way. This is an earlier, these are both from that demonstration. I heard about it, I got there by bus, and it was really a show of strength by the young people.
When was it? 2008.
What?
In your book, it said 2008.
208. 208, yep, 10 years ago, and still they haven't. Mostly it is integrated, but with the ultra-Orthodox and the Orthodox, they have, they govern their own schools to a great extent. I can't say what the percentage is at all.
It also had to do with that there were still Ethiopian Jews in Gondar, and the 2008 protest was also because the Israeli government, while they take any Russian or one in, they said that there was not enough money to absorb the Ethiopian Jews.
Yeah, any excuse, right?
And the suicide was in part also because they would take, just like in the United States, the way they would take Native Americans out into their tribal schools, they do that all the time with Ethiopians. So they'd come here and they'd take them into these schools that were Orthodox schools away from
married a woman who's British and American, and that's their baby. It's a little cocktail, I say. And I stayed with his family, and this was just a dear moment between mother and daughter in the home. And this was a mother and daughter, I think, maybe a son, in an absorption center in Beersheba, a new arrival, a late arrival, and this was taken in 212. And as I said, there are still a trickle of Ethiopian Jews coming in.
Is she farming or is she?
No, she's just, yes, they have their own gardens, and she was just picking a few vegetables. This is, he was born in Ethiopia, and he's playing basketball in Tel Aviv. So they are modernizing a great deal. He happens to be a very prominent actor in Israel. Did anyone see the movie Go and Become? Something like that? He had a minor part in it. He was asked to do the major role, but he was too busy with other things, including acting school. This is the first boy who was born in Israel from Ethiopian parents. His family got there in the late 70s, and he is Tigrayan. I think they had education and money, and so he started networking real fast, and he has this technology school for other young Ethiopians. There is opportunity if you know how to do it like the Israeli way, but most do not have uncles or friends that give them pull them up, and it's going to take longer. Israelis by culture are very aggressive and they're really difficult. And Ethiopians are gentle, reserved. And when I first got there, my first show, I said, will Israeli learn? Can they learn from their Ethiopian Israeli brothers?
No.
Nah, it was a fantasy of mine. Yeah. So at this point, believe it or not, there are 2,000 Ethiopian Israelis living in the United States. They are by far the most aggressive, the most entrepreneurial. Every time I go to Israel during this time, I kept saying, you'd be better off if you came to the United States. No one believed me. It's
you know,
true.
adjust, it's a different culture, different people.
It's very true. I don't want to minimize anyone's struggle, but they struggled more. The
But
Ethiopians.
today, you know, when I go back to Israel, I see the Ethiopian community. I mean, you see them as soldiers, as you're showing.
That's the only way.
dancers. They're just
Yes.
very much have come to be part of the society in many ways.
Unfortunately, after the army, they can't find work. I knew people, they had friendships in the army, but as soon as they left, that was it. The friendships disappeared with the other Israelis. Yes,
How would they come here? How would they be able to come here?
in the United States.
Yes.
Don't forget, it's second or third generation. They come on visas for to just tour
And they stay.
a lot. It's not going to happen during our dear president now. But historically, I met many, especially in New York. Yes, and they went through the process of going home, getting, you know, when they got established here, going home and
What
Stop.
kind of things can they do here that they could not do in Israel?
make a living. Those that come here are really entrepreneurial and good at learning the system. Some went back to Ethiopia where they had family who were doing well. Some Ethiopian Jewish families didn't immigrate, so their relatives would go back and forth, make money doing the family business in Addis, and then going back and forth. But the majority here in the United States were on their own, mostly young men, very entrepreneurial, up and down the eastern seacoast. You don't see them as yet in LA because it's not close at all to Israel. They married in, you know, some. This was a young Ethiopian who had a scholarship to go to Hasadna, which is a classical music school in the German colony in Jerusalem. Yes.
So my question is, the bus driver who you said you had to take her picture while she wasn't looking, does she know she's in a book? Did you
Absolutely.
Okay.
I got her name, and she made the cut. She knows she made the cut. She can't speak English, and I emailed her when I went back to Israel, but she never, you know, it's so hard to keep in touch. Phone numbers might not change, but I could lose it. I sent her the picture though. Why? Because it was digital, and I was able, once I went digital, to do that.
And also at one point when Ethiopian Jews were donating blood to blood drives, they were discarding it.
That was the biggest shameful thing that happened. There's, you know, complex reasons. Do you remember the year?
No, I don't remember the exact year, but I remember it was a huge scandal
It
because they were
was
saying they had
we have